Hello.
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 Hello. How's everyone doing? Scabat, you look distinctly less thumbs up.
Okay, my audio works now, I think.
Nice. You right? Hey, Andrew. Course. Hey, how's it going? So, in fact, before we dive into this discussion, Scarlett, would you mind just giving us a bit of a brief overview of where we're up to on the API service migration?
The service migration is as follows. We have the API service deployed in pre-prod and deployed in staging. It is taking traffic in pre-prod successfully with no errors as far as I know. I've not looked at the error or the logs recently, but also staging doesn't, or pre-prod does not take any traffic, and we don't have anything synthetic happening there. So we'll see it deployed today, and we'll see QA run today due to the security release. No, that's the release instance. Never mind, we won't see that today. But we will see QA run due to something because QA runs against pre-prod on a regular cadence. As far as I know, those runs are relatively successful. It is not taking traffic in staging. Currently, there's an issue where we are missing a secret that needs to be populated into the Rails service. That way the API knows to authenticate appropriately to the container registry for events. This is a notifications event feature of the container registry itself. We leverage this capability for sending data to Sisense. But the API needs this such that we could have events coming in for geo-replication, since geo is an enabled service inside of the staging environment. Because that configuration item is missing, Henry noticed that there's a crap ton of errors. So currently Sentry or staging API is disabled from taking in traffic in Kubernetes. I logged that error message somewhere. There was already an open issue to solve this in the Helm chart, and I chose to take or tackle this issue myself, which may not have been the greatest idea because it's taken me a while to accomplish it. But I was hoping to get that yesterday. I'm hoping to finish it today. I'll probably say that again tomorrow. So let me see if I could find the error message that just so that we all are aware of where we are. We saw this in Sentry.
How did no one notice this before?
Notice what specifically?
First of all, the staging is not working correctly there. And number two, that charts have been GA for 3 years and no one ran into this problem.
No one runs Geo for the Helm charts. I would hedge a bet.
Yeah,
it was released relatively recently considering the circumstances. And it works because Omnibus it's configured to accept a token, but we're abusing that token unnecessarily. I'm not going to touch that portion. I thought this was a major configuration problem, but things work fine. Omnibus is handling this like it's supposed to, which is why we don't see this today in staging. It only happens when the API in Kubernetes starts taking traffic. But just to show you, I mean, this is nothing super exciting, but really what it boils down to is that we're getting to this portion of our Rails code inside the API, and it's failing because this secret is completely missing. Omnibus will automatically fill this out when the GitLab YAML gets built, and subsequently GitLab control builds the file, but nothing like this happens inside of our Helm chart today. So that's my goal in solving. My initial MR got some feedback from distribution that I need to tackle that I'm trying to resolve. And then late yesterday, I ran into another random issue. So I'm hoping to get this out there today. Get something reviewed today, at least is my goal. So that's the current status. So because of that, I don't really have anything to show for, because until we re-enable the staging API in Kubernetes, I'm not really sure what error messages we're going to run into next at this moment in time. But this shouldn't preclude us or shouldn't stop us from doing additional testing. So we have a few issues, but I guess we'll talk about that during discussion.
Mm-hmm.
But
Cool.
that's the
Yeah,
next
if you
thing I'm
want
going to
to
talk
move
about.
on to those, and like they might be good demo items as well. Do you want to move on to the other bogged down items? Should we number these? Number
Sure.
6.
So yeah,
Before you
so
continue, I just wanted to ask another question,
Sure.
if I may. Skarbek, like I see that the merge request was created 2 days ago. You're getting reviews, you're getting movement, right? It's not like you're waiting for something.
Yeah, so far I've gotten some initial questions from Balu, and then I've been working with Jason the past few days on stuff that ends up blocking me because simply knowledge and experience of working with the Helm charts.
Okay.
So it's actively progressing. It's not stalled or anything.
Okay. And it might be a good idea for you to start participating there as well, to just get familiarized with what's happening, not necessarily like contribute code immediately, but just participate in there.
So
I looked into
idea
the MR already, and I was surprised how complex it is to add something to our charts, really. It doesn't look very easy, and a lot of code and tests there already. Yeah.
This
Yes.
particular change just kind of sucks just due to the nature of how the initial implementation was completed. It's becoming a little bit more difficult than it really needed to be, but that's outside of what we really care about. As far as getting Henry involved, I've also got an issue that I pulled that is blocking Andrew from completing adding the necessary saturation metrics for various components. I've got one final merge request I need to get done for that one, and I figured I could bring Henry into that one as well to hopefully wipe that out, because there's just one last, the web services chart is the last thing we need to touch. And then that one is done. It's just a matter of upgrading our chart and the necessary labels everywhere. And then Andrew could take it away with metrics. I'm hoping to get Henry involved in that. I just haven't had time.
Okay, just send me the MR. Which one
Certainly.
is it?
I'll drop it into the agenda here shortly.
Okay.
So regarding bullet point number 6 in discussion, I've been dedicating this entire week and part of the very tail end of last week towards fixing this problem with our Helm chart. So from my standpoint of things, I haven't really been doing a lot of work with the API. Just because if we're not taking any traffic, it's not really easy for me to test things until I feel comfortable with getting this issue out the door. But there are things that we could do in the meantime. And I'm wondering, Henry, if you want to take some of these items. I know you're working on the readiness review, and some of this work is directly related to helping you complete the readiness review. So I'm wondering if you would probably like to work together with me to maybe finish up some of these items.
Yeah, absolutely. I will try to be of more help because I was reading a lot on trying to understand a lot the last week, so I didn't do that much here, but I think I can jump in now to spread the load a little bit, and you can focus on your chart issue there.
Yeah,
So
I'd be
I will
happy
try
to
to jump
pair
on
with
those
you
issues.
for any of this, or if you want to just take one of these and use me strictly for guidance, I'm happy to help you in any which way works for you.
Yeah.
Is
We'll do
there
so.
a particular order? Like, are these ordered? Let's go back.
No, this was strictly here's a list of things that we should be able to accomplish to some extent today.
Okay. Is there one of those?
Some of them slight.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Is one of these like more like easier for sort of starting out on? Like, is there one that
yes,
you recommend?
definitely. So the vetting of the deployments, this was just the second one there. That one, the goal for that one is just to make sure that we're not going to have awkward problems like we did with the web services deployment process. So it's just a matter of running some sort of test, sending traffic to it, watching a deploy rollout, and making sure we're not going to have awkward issues. There's a few more bits of details inside of the actual description of the issue. The first one list is probably going to be the easiest one because we already have the API deployed everywhere. And that's just reviewing our configurations. I did this for staging already. Somehow I still missed this registry configuration item. But I have not done pre-prod. I still want to do pre-prod just to make sure that we're not going to run into any other awkwardness later. The third one will probably be a little more difficult because you'd have to do a little bit of local configuration setup to send traffic through the Nginx ingress since the API is not taking any traffic right now. So that one will take a little bit of work, and I'd be happy to work with Henry to see if we can figure out a good way to test that. But I think the first two are good ones that we could test quickly while we're still waiting on the fix for the API right now.
Yeah, sounds good. I'm wondering a bit if there would be some way to bring Kubernetes config and omnibus config, like chef config, into a canonical form so that we could compare it somehow, because manually comparing these configurations isn't really that easy, right?
I would love a tool to do this. If I knew how to program better, I would probably suck everything into a huge YAML object and just do a nice like diff on something like this, but it's kind of hard because the configuration files are built significantly different between the two systems.
Names
like
are different
Kubernetes,
as well.
names are different. The structure of certain items is slightly different because I forget which one does this, but one of them will point to files to read while the other one says, here's the actual content of that file. So
Okay,
it's
I will
not
just
easy.
give it a look and see what we can do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there anything we can do now? So like this is some of these are going to be a little trickier to get started on. Like, so vetting the API deployments, Henry's never done a deployment before. So that's probably not as trivial as it might be. So we should think about that. But is there anything we can like go through now in the next like 20 minutes or so?
Yeah, we can try to. I don't want to vet the audit configuration because that's going to be boring, tedious, and not useful for this demo. But we could at least send traffic to the API and see what happens when we do a deploy.
Cool, let's do it.
While Skarbek is setting this up, is there any reason why we shouldn't have Graham involved in these issues as well? Not expecting for him to do work if he doesn't want to do work, but including him, if nothing else, mentioning him in the issue that this is what's happening here. Because Henry is already going through onboarding anyway, why not do it in one go?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, okay, that sounds good. We've also got another blocker issue that we could, which we can talk about, but it's another one that will probably be on our list of work. So that's another one, but yeah.
The point is not there to just give him work right now. It's more about, look, this is where we are at. Read, follow along, maybe pitch in if you're interested, if you have a moment or so to pitch in, but more about the surroundings.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, so just really quickly, I'll share my screen. Is the font size kosher?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So here I did the backend method of hacking into our staging environment. And here I'm just doing a port forward to port 8181, which is where we accept traffic for the API service. And here I'm just doing a basic curl, nothing super exciting. So what I really want to test is just to make sure that we have, whoa, I want to make sure that we've got enough pods running. I forget the labels that we're supposed to use. And then I want a deploy to happen. So I'll just do a very blunt test, but I would probably use like Bombardier or something similar just to send more information to it. But then what we could do is just do a my goal here is that we don't get 500 style messages. Getting 404s, I don't care because I'm hitting the blanket endpoint where it's not useful for us. I don't care about that. I care about the fact that I don't want to see 500 messages, 502s and 503s. K deploy, I think it's restart. GitLab web service API. Could have sworn it was deploy. Oh, what was the easy way to do this? Rollout? Yes, rollout. Restart. And you want a deployment. GitLab API, GitLab web service API. So we're watching for 404s and no any stalled requests or no 500s. And we could see that we had one pod rotate. I'm expecting to see another one rotate as well. Because we only have 3 pods running and we are using the default rotation standard, I would not expect us to see any more than say 1 pod rotated at a time, which is perfectly reasonable. A better test would be to use Bombardier to see this get scaled up and then run the same test, but I think we'll get similar results in this particular case. And you can see it still takes us nearly a minute to get the pods ready to go. So that one's ready. So yeah, we're seeing a new one being torn down, a new one being spun up, which is good. And so far we haven't seen any errors, which is precisely what I want to see. Granted, I'm doing this in a while loop, so it's not but so great. I don't think I've got, well, I do have it installed.
Can we use logs to double check that for staging?
What kind of
Not
logs?
now, but
yeah, we could look at our logs. So I'm not going through, I'm going specifically through the service endpoint for this test. So we're not going to have anything for HA proxy, but we should see logs for Rails and Workhorse. On prod. So while this test continues to run, I'll get the logs going on my other window.
I was wondering a bit how we need to set up all these different knobs for doing deployments, like resource requests, blackout times, and the target thresholds, average thresholds, and things like that. I mean, we have some settings which we use since the beginning for WebSockets already. I think we didn't change much for API right now, right? But also we didn't test much with big scale. So I'm wondering, do we have any written down things why we set the settings like they are? Or is it more like we tested by slowly ramping up traffic and then we found these issues, these settings working? Or
Yeah, so if you look at our readiness reviews for our past migrations, we usually have a blurb of text in there that discusses why we settled on certain values, and they may have changed since the readiness review was executed. The other location where you could find certain values is do a git blame and figure out when those values got populated and look at the commit message associated with it. Jarv and I have both done a relatively decent job either documenting either in the commit message or on the actual issue associated with that merge request that goes into some of the details as to how we decided to calculate how to set those values. If it was related to an incident, maybe less details may be available, but when we first initially would enable those resource requests or limits or what have you, we'll usually try to document in some way, shape, or form how we did some math.
okay, I will check that, because it's interesting, because we often directly say a certain amount of millis of CPU resource, for instance, and I was wondering if maybe taking percentages maybe would be better sometimes, because if we change the node type or have more CPUs and things like that, we need to adjust all of that, right? So
yeah,
that looks complicated.
And that's perfectly reasonable. It's what we've had to do in the past as well. And, it's hard to compare our VM infrastructure directly to Kubernetes just due to, oh, see, this is not what I want. So we know something is wrong here. I know that this traffic is probably going to one of these terminating pods, which is not what I want. So I know we've got something that we need to resolve here.
That message is from Workhorse, isn't it?
I'm hitting port 8181 I forget which ports which run service. Do you recall off the top of your head?
I don't know, but GitLab is not responding. I thought that was one of the really crusty Workhorse messages, but
okay. Whoops.
Might be wrong. Either way, it's not a good thing, is it?
No, it's not. So this is precisely
Workhorse.
what I wanted to avoid. It is Workhorse?
Yeah.
Okay.
Workhorse, well, at least in Omnibus, Workhorse is listening on 8181. So I'm assuming, let me check charts real quick.
So Workhorse was still alive, but Unicorn was dead. That's kind of
Yeah.
like a hint at what's going on there.
Yeah.
Puma in this case, yeah.
And we see, I think what's happening in this particular case, because they're still in a terminating state, they're taking forever to leave. I think this is where we've got the blackout period set in a global fashion. So we're waiting like 240 something seconds before these pods finally get torn down. That needs to happen faster. I think we did that for, what did we do that for? Git sessions, because uploading Git sessions usually takes way too long. But so we know that this test has failed, so we know we have something to work on. To share some logs, because Marin asked, we are seeing 503s on our readiness endpoint. If I recall correctly, that's expected though. I think we send a signal to Puma and then Puma will start to fail its health check on purpose. That way it helps prevent itself from receiving traffic. So maybe if I exclude the health controller, I wonder if we'll see different information. Oh, it's up there. Yeah, so only the readiness endpoint is what failed me here, not my check was just going to v4 API or API v4 rather. But in Workhorse, we may see something different since obviously I failed here. So we get 502s. So this is exactly the behavior that we were seeing in my test. Yeah, this is 8181 is what Workhorse is running on. Okay.
So what does that mean? Sorry, like why didn't it error on the first one?
Because there was something still existing taking traffic. We saw the new pod come in, and it looks like I'm still not getting any traffic despite here. Let me go back to my shell. We can see that curl is still failing, even though we have 2 running pods. So for some reason, I'm not transitioning my traffic to the new pods. But I bet if I close this and restart this, it might work again. Or not. Perfect. So maybe my test has failed in this particular case. Maybe I should be port forwarding on the service endpoint, but instead port forwarding on the ingress controller. That can't be right, because we use the service endpoint for HA proxy and that handles things just fine. I wonder if it's a remnant of port forwarding. Maybe I should run this test next to the cluster. That way I'm not doing a port forward.
Yeah, but we got 500 responses, right? So we got through the API. So we really reached something, and
well, we got through towards pods that were in a terminating state. So there was one function of that pod that was torn down and traffic was still being sent there.
Then the readiness isn't working as it should for signaling that it should be out of rotation.
Yeah.
Interesting. It would be nice to look into these failure cases.
Yes, that's precisely what that issue is for. Let's see. Something is telling me that I shouldn't be trusting the port forward capabilities of this. Let's see. Well, that's a lot faster too. Okay, so same test, but in this case, I'm not doing a port forward because I suspect that was probably a little problematic, and I'll just do a simple restart again. And Henry, just in case you are unaware of this, our console server is in the same network as our Kubernetes clusters. So that's why I'm able to hit the service IP address that's external to the cluster without doing any awkward hoops. Same way
using
HA proxy.
shuttle, right?
Well, I'm using shuttle just so that I could connect to the cluster and initiate this rollout restart down here. That's the only reason why I use shuttle. The console server, which is running the actual test here, is using the external IP address of that endpoint, which resides in the same network for the same VPC that everything lives in. This prevents me from needing to do a port forward, which is what I was doing earlier. And I wonder if that was causing me an issue. While that runs, still coming up. I'm checking logs on a different screen. I don't want to share my entire screen because I have a 34-inch wide monitor and I don't want to make the YouTube difficult to look at later. While this test runs, Marin, I wonder what your knowledge, or Andrew for that matter, I wonder what your knowledge is on the API and it accepting file uploads from end users. What you both know about recent incidents related to this.
I mean, because of disk running full?
Yeah.
Because I experienced some of these incidents, and I think there were some problems with uploads where Puma is trying to write those down to temporary file space, right? And
Precisely.
I hit this also. I don't know if this is fixed, apparently not. But this is really a big issue if we don't have enough space in temp, right? And sometimes people were uploading hundreds of megabytes or even bigger, and then we ran into this issue.
There's certainly it might have just been for artifacts, but there is an issue where Workhorse will reject really big file uploads. But I'm talking like multi-gigabytes, because there were obviously people trying to send multi-gigabyte uploads.
I think the problem also was if Puma crashes, then these files stay there and will never get deleted. So if that happens frequently, so after a few days,
that won't happen with TempFS, right? Though, will it?
That's but
it should be there.
Well, like here, I'm on API 01 in production, and I have two specific files that are of concern to me. We have Puma followed by a date timestamp and some random stuff, and we have rack multipart followed by a date timestamp and some crap. They appear to max out at roughly 1 gigabyte in size, and these have prevented deploys yesterday for at least 2 of our API nodes. I'm curious as to what these actually are.
I need to dig out the old incident where I found something similar. And I think looking into the files, we found that there's some, can't remember, if you look into the file and the content, you figure out what it is. And I think it was, in my case, it was Puma workers crashing. And then they just leave their temporary files staying there and they never vanish. And so this space can fill up. And I need to look if we had corrective actions which have taken place since then. I need to dig it out.
I can tell you from the conception of charts, how we were thinking about this, and I am almost ready to guarantee that nothing has changed since then. We went with the idea that any buffering that is happening that goes to a temporary location, we're taking the best case. At that point, we were taking the best case scenario of the TMP is large enough, and B, that TMP is cleaned automatically frequently enough for us to not care about the relatively small files. So anything that is larger, I think it was 5 gigs that we were talking about back then. So anything within 5 gigs that goes into TMP, we would be like, okay, fine. So if you upload a huge artifact of 10 gigs, things would fail. I think that was back then, the 5 gig was the limit we were talking about total. How many do you have there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Look at that.
Yeah, and yesterday the deployment had failed and there was a few more, but like, you know, this severely hinders these tiny disks.
Yeah.
We only run 20 gig disks in the API nodes. So, you know, 5 of those files really locks everything up, unfortunately. But
yeah, but the idea was the project limits were 10 gigs at a time.
Yeah.
So we said like, we don't expect that people will upload 10 gigs in one go with one push or with one addition.
So
it's
I
naive,
guess,
I know, but it's what we started with, right? Like we had nothing to start
Yep.
with at that time.
yeah. So Henry, I think this would be a good thing that we need to capture in our readiness review, because we had to deal with this for Sidekick as well. Project exports being the primary one where we need to write temporary data, sometimes a lot of it to a temporary location. So what we did in that particular case is we mounted an empty dir, and we told that empty dir to fail the pod if it breached a certain size limit. I think we'll probably want to do the same here in the API. That way we don't have data accumulating over the course of time and bringing down the actual node that's supporting the pod.
Yeah, at least we need to have metrics for disk full on any space we are using.
Fun
on our
fact,
box. Yeah.
There's no current way to monitor the size of an empty dir usage. Last time I checked. We have upgraded Kubernetes, so maybe there's a new metric available to us, but last time, at least on 117, there was no metric available for that.
I already made a to-do note for myself for the readiness review for this issue because I saw the API issues there. But I mean, the underlying issues that we shouldn't keep those files around, I mean, should be fixed somehow, but we can't be sure of that. We need to find a measure in our pods how to do this, yeah.
Let's just make sure we link to any existing issues in GitLab org as necessary inside the readiness review. I don't think we need to block ourselves on the migration because of this. It's just something to be aware of.
Yeah, we should have issues for that, right? And then solve it.
So while this test was running, I'm guessing we performed a deploy because I saw a few API pods chime in with a different number. I did not validate that deploy is going through, but if you'll notice, we only got 4 4s this entire time. So I think my original test was flawed. And I'm looking at our logs and I'm not seeing any 500 class error messages at all. So I'm kind of happy with how this has turned out. I do wish they would terminate faster, but I think we need to tune our blackout period for just the API service in this particular case to make that happen.
So you're right, there was a deployment, staging's deploying at the moment.
Perfect.
And the blackout stuff, Jason has an MR, which is almost ready, right? So we can do something with that.
Yeah. So hopefully we could cut down on the time it takes the API to deploy or remove old pods rather.
Yes.
So from the standpoint of interrupting users, a simple while loop with a curl proves there's nothing wrong. I'd probably try to redo this with Bombardier as an extra validation step. I just don't know how to quickly run that app because I don't use it often.
Yeah, let me do this later, maybe. I would like to play with that.
I think console has it installed in Jarb's user account if you want to sudo into his account and use it there.
Okay, nice.
Because we allow that on our console boxes. Security's going to have a field day if they watch this video.
I just interviewed an infrastructure security engineer last hour, so good topic for next interview, maybe.
Cool. Okay, sounds good. So do we have a plan then for, does that help you out, Scarbat? You're going to keep going on the charts issue that you've got right now. And Henry, are you going to go in with the API deployments first? Is that the one? See if you can wrap that up.
Yeah, that would be nice to work with. Yeah, we'll look into that.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
And if you want a pair, just hit me up, man.
The 6.3, this evaluating whether we still need to set the Nginx stuff, that might need a bit of detail. I see that we would want to test something, but I'm not sure what we're looking for. So it would be good, like, to add a bit of detail into that description of what we're looking for.
Okay. Yeah, I'll try to find the old issue that led to this, and I'll link it here, and I'll fill in the details of I'll populate it with data.
Perfect.
So we know what we need to do for this one.
I just went down a little rabbit hole with that maximum file upload size while we were looking here. And the change request went in, but what I didn't realize is that the Ruby has to tell Workhorse what the maximum file upload size is for each request. And the only place where Rails does that at the moment is for artifacts. So we've got all this cool infrastructure, but we're only using it for artifacts and not all the other things. So there probably needs to be some work on that it's probably not even a big change, because it just has to say, like, don't give me anything bigger than a gigabyte or whatever.
But does Rails know the size of an object that's coming towards it?
No, but so what happens is Workhorse receives a request, it goes to Rails and says, hey, I've got this request, like, I'm going to do something with it. I suppose these are all ones where Workhorse is uploading it to object storage directly, and it's kind of circumventing Rails. So Rails does the auth, and then it says, okay, upload it, but don't let it be bigger than X. But I suppose in the case, those failed files are ones that have been directly ingested in Rails, right? Because if you look at the names, they've got rack in their names and stuff like that.
It really depends on what object you're talking about. So for example, attachment uploads, as far as I know, they don't really go through Workhorse. All of that is being handled by Thog inside of Rails. Okay. So you don't even have that option. Artifacts are being handled by Workhorse, so you have that option. LFS, a couple of others. So I think the things that have the option of direct upload, if you want a fun conversation, start that up with Alessio. He dreams that during nights, I heard last time. So he will tell you exactly which ones have. Actually, I'll just link you the blueprint, the object storage blueprint. So you can read that up on the differences there.
I think when I looked into this incident, which I still can't find, I found that there's a setting for Puma even to choose the upload cache directory or something. I'm not sure if that was related exactly to that one, but that would also maybe be a way to at least store things somewhere else instead of temp. But I need to dig it out. I can't find it right now.
Is that just setting, well, I guess maybe you'll discover this when you find it, but if it's just setting the location where files get uploaded, I care less about that, and I care more about, can we skip writing anything to disk if possible? I imagine they'll probably just use up RAM at that point, and maybe that's just as bad though.
Yeah, I think you've got to kind of write to disk, but you've just got to make sure you clear up after yourself.
Yeah, right? And I think that's not happening in certain cases in here. But I guess if Puma's crashing, it's going to happen.
I will try to dig that out and see what we can do there, or open an issue for solving this. And then see how we can work around this and Kubernetes.
Nice. Is there anything else anyone wants to discuss or demo today?
I don't believe I have anything else to show for right now.
Cool. Well, we're making super progress. The blockers are all moving along nicely as well. So like great progress there. Do we need to have the readiness review ready before we can move to Canary?
I think by the time the logging work will be done, I don't think we need to block ourselves moving to Canary for the readiness review. I think we should block ourselves going to Canary on the logging work. Just because those logs look disgusting. They're horrible. I don't like looking at them inside of the staging environment. It's very difficult to troubleshoot. There's a lot of files. I don't like it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I would love to see the logging work done before we go to Canary.
Okay, so
Personal opinion.
Just that though, like, and you're happy with everything else, or readiness? Would we normally do the readiness review for Canary?
I mean, the readiness review should be done before we deploy anything, ideally, I think, because it's also about how we do things, right? And
right.
But my goal was, I mean, normally we don't do this in most cases, right? We start implementing and then we write readiness reviews in most cases. So, but my goal was to get something out for review end of this week at least. So I tried to hit this goal so that there's at least something to let others look over it. I mean, finishing a readiness review can also take a long time, depending on how many discussions are coming out of that.
Yeah.
But at least that we have something out there. I will try to get this until Friday.
Cool. Okay, that sounds good.
Sounds like timing will work out, so it's not going to be a blocker then.
Awesome. Good stuff. All right. Anything else anyone wants to cover? No? Okay, fantastic. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Have a good one, everyone.
Bye.